quick fill-in? Have you gone a lot, or?
No, lately I haven't. Yeah.
Kelly? Okay.
One second.
And she's not here right now. Yes, good. Hey, Kelly Vogel? Please. Because that's and you're not here. I'll get these to them. Okay. Next paper coming out. Okay, I updated your calendar just to keep things flowing to the end of the term. And as I said, I knew that as being my first term at Pikes Peak, I'd probably have to adjust a tiny bit. So I did adjust a couple of things. So if you wanted to throw your other calendar away, it's pretty close, but it's a little bit off. So I changed the calendar a bit. So it starts from today and goes through past, it goes to the end of the term. I want you to notice a couple things. First of all, Thursday I will return your problem solution draft, so then your final draft will be due on the 30th, giving you the weekend. If you go down to Thanksgiving, notice the Tuesday before Thanksgiving we have class. However, I also know human nature, and I know kids, and I know families and things come up, and so I know people who take that day off and try to get wherever it is you're going. If that happens and you do choose to take that day off, I don't suggest it, but if you do, the final draft of the rhetorical essay is due that day. If you are not going to be there, you need to turn it in early rather than late.
They didn't want me to test and see, so I said in the court,
Yeah. I didn't think they would. But I don't trust them. And you didn't bring it. Okay. So on that rhetorical analysis, on the 13th of November, on the 13th week, the 20th of November, if you were not going to be there that Tuesday, you need to hand it in the Thursday before. Okay? And the reason being is that over the long break, obviously, I will have time to work on your essays, and we need to get them back as quickly as possible because then you have your last couple of things there before Christmas break. Also, hunting season is coming, and boys, I know you in hunting season, so you need to pay attention to some due dates again. I will tell you that if papers come in late for that, like if you're not there that Tuesday or whatever, I will take off the late day. Okay? So there is your updated calendar. So we should be back on track. Okay. I do not want to lose this. Somebody give you that heads up there about that.
Yeah.
They weren't very nice to you, were they? Good class, good class. Thanks for not spoiling up that good thing. Okay, on comparing contrast essays that I just handed out, can I have yours, sir? Max, can I have your paper here? Kelly, can I have your paper here? Okay, I did not get, now, Brandon B. Brandon Bruchel not here? Andrew's not here. Brandon W. Here? Damar? Not here. There's people I can talk to later. Jennifer Quillen, you know that you have the essay.
Yeah.
Okay. Josh Keys.
Yeah.
I don't have your address stuff, right? And Matt T. I had your rough, but you haven't given the final rough, is that right? I need those. So. Nope. Yeah, that was very accommodating. Anybody else? I just wanted it done so that you guys can get a 0. All right. And finally, the exercise for today. Bring it out by Thursday. You guys have a weekend to do it. Here you go, ma'am. That's why I had to update the calendar.
So what are we going to do next class?
Yes. Okay. All right, guys. We're going to do an exercise. It's we've started looking at rhetorical analysis, and as you know, analysis means to take apart. We talked a little bit about rhetoric and the 3 major rhetorical devices or fields. They call them devices. Sometimes they call them appeals. Sometimes it really is the same thing. But what we're going to do is I'm going to give you some tools today about how to analyze material, or some strategies to take apart material so that you can find the appropriate quotes and find the right material, so that when you're actually analyzing and then evaluating, because realistically, a rhetorical analysis is another type of evaluation. You're evaluating how well a person either spoke, like during the presidential debate, for example, or how well an article or a commercial persuaded you to get their product. And so realistically, a rhetorical analysis is just an analysis to evaluate how well that was done. So, oops, those are my keys. That does not have. You know, always laugh because you keep before me. Doesn't just log out and turn everything off. So this that I gave you, we're going to work this strategy called soapstone. Has anybody ever heard of soapstone maybe in you did poetry maybe in high school? Okay. You're the first person out of all of my classes. Anybody else know about soapstone? First person out of all my classes. I'm surprised. I'm not surprised that you know it, I'm surprised that they don't. No, seriously. every year since 7th grade, when I taught, I taught 6 through 12. When I taught and my colleagues, we all taught Soapstone. It was like one of the strategies. And so when I got here and said, how many people know it? Nobody raised their hands. I was like, oh, okay. So I thought that this was going to be a bit of a review, and instead it's going to be a strategy. Maybe. This is why I wish they would just log out. Try it again. If not, then I can talk without the, it just helps you guys. I do not have a copy of your final year contract. I have your rough, or I had your rough, and you got it back. But I didn't find a copy. Okay, something is going on, and this system is not making itself apparently. So I suppose I'll do it without it for now. Okay, guys. So this soapstone, we were looking at verbal analysis, and we had the three: ethos, pathos, and logos, right? And I told you that there's different ways that we can find evidence of this. So for logic, facts, precedents. You know what precedents are? Like legal precedents. when we're working on, let's see, one more time. Precedence is like, okay, so if I am a lawyer, or if I'm establishing law, then I search for precedents of other times that that the judiciary branch or judicial branch would have ruled on a particular subject, and use that precedent to prove my case. Okay, and so sometimes you have to establish a precedent. If it's the first time you establish it, then obviously you have to use facts, and you have to like interview people and see what their ethics and morals are, and so on and so forth. But after they have weighed all that evidence, then they establish what's called precedence, or a baseline that says, now anybody else who does this should be judged the same way, right? Kind of like when we do an evaluation. We set a precedence when we say, this is the best, and this is, here's the criteria that I expect, and if it meets that criteria, I've set my precedence. That's exactly how law works. And so, Roe versus Wade, for example, was the very first precedent that overturned the law that used to say that you could not have an abortion. Okay, and so now that is set as a precedent, when a person has an abortion, they are no longer tried for having for killing something, for killing a baby, or and the doctors are no longer tried for malpractice and so on and so forth. So see, Windows still is not responding. Something's wrong with the system. So precedent is definitely one way in law, is one way that we can establish credibility. I was trying to think of some other statistics, obviously. Pathos is the one that I wanted to work on today, because we said emotions, that means emotions. And I said, what did I say? I said, like, testimonials. Say again? Empathy. So any of those emotions, like apathy, empathy, any of those emotions would be pathos. Also, figurative language. A lot of times when they draw the picture for you, or develop, remember I always say we think in pictures. A lot of our emotions are held up in what we think of as pictures. I might copy this article off. I have an article in the old book that I used to teach from that it was kind of like Nature of Paparazzi, and it had this problem solution type of idea. But this guy, the story was a granddad had mistaken and rolled over his granddaughter. Okay, and the press all came to the house trying to get the scoop. Okay, and in trying to get the scoop, one of the photographers, they're asking his grandpa all the questions, and the grandpa, of course, is in total, denial, first of all, and you can tell by the story that his mind is floating. He doesn't know what to say to these people. He's just, completely destroyed. And the emotion of this picture that this story is telling, you can tell that the granddad's crushed. And the photographer basically has all the license in the world. Legally, you cannot be sued for libel to take the pictures if you wanted to, and so on and so forth. The pictures were fell words. And so he has this opportunity to take a picture of the scene, or this girl who's shrouded. They had taken her into the house and shrouded her. And then to get the rest of the evidence and so on and so forth. And so all you saw was some blood stains and they talked about blood stains, and they talked about this will and how shrouded and the granddad, how he was. And so you could have this whole picture, and you're looking at emotional appeal. The appeal for the masses of seeing, oh, that great crash site, that'd be kind of cool, has its, what do we call that when, like, you see something that everybody wants to see? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
The whole, everybody gets hysterical, and they're like, oh, you know. Okay? Or the emotions of just that granddad who, just imagine opening the paper the next day and seeing a picture of your grandfather all, you know, shrouded on the front page of the paper. What emotional appeal does that have to the reader? Okay, and it also depends on the reader's background, obviously, as to whether or not, you know, some people see it as sensationalized, that's what it is. So sensationalism, our whole culture is like this, oh yeah, let's see this sensationalized picture, whereas if we were really empathetic, playing on somebody's emotions, he knew it was wrong. So ethically, he knew it was wrong to take that picture. Okay? Emotionally, what picture was being painted? Had this guy took the picture, he sure as heck would be considered probably the jerk of the country, okay? Kind of guy. And so those types of appeals, it depends on the backgrounds. Emotional appeals depends on the background. It often depends on the ethics of the person. Okay, and I think maybe it's finally coming up. So anyway, the figurative language and that the whole seeing the picture, you know, even if it's a word picture, but you could just visualize what's going on in your head. It's not what's going on. So you can just visualize what's going on in your head. That's really ways that we can find pathos or the emotional appeal. And I wanted to focus on emotional appeal as we're reading this particular essay. Now, I want you guys to start thinking of, although we're not writing it yet, you are going to be writing a rhetorical analysis, meaning that you're going to be writing it about a piece. And you'll have a choice as to whether you want your analysis to be about a speech or about an advertisement maybe, or maybe about a film, or really any media, as long as it has some sort of way of having a transcript and you can talk about the appeal, works well for analysis. Okay? You may not, however, pick some of the more glorified speeches that we already know are great speeches. There's no reason to analyze them anymore. They've been analyzed for years. You cannot analyze the I have a dream speech.
Yeah.
You cannot analyze the Gettysburg Address. Absolutely not. Because your work is already done for you. You can't do it. Okay, I will not allow this. I will allow, however, some fun things. For example, what if you wanted to do a speech? How about the Trayvon, whatever his name was, the dog, the guy who's using the dogs for fighting? Michael Vick, not Trayvon. Who's the Trayvon guy? I think he might have been one of his. Yeah. Michael Vick with the dogs fighting. After that happened, he gave a big speech apologizing. He was all crying and everything. And so there was also a big speech that's interesting. How about the guy that was taking pictures of himself and taking pictures of himself and sending around the other athlete? Can't think of his name. He was a really popular athlete. I cannot think of his name. Anyway, he was taking pictures of parts that he probably shouldn't have, and he had to have a big speech. And that speech is actually available in, it's transcribed, and you can go look at those types of speeches. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the most popular speech in the world. It doesn't have to be the Gettysburg Address. Okay, there are speeches out there that you could look at. For example, Maya Angelou. She was African American writer who is very eloquent speaker. So there's a zillion things that you can do if you want to write look at speech.
If you did the presidential debates, would you need to do both characters, or would you just pick one?
However you need to Now, I picked this speech because it's small enough that we can kind of chunk it out in a few minutes here. But so let's go ahead and move on. But as I said, it could be a speech. It could also be a film. It could be an advertisement. We can look at the credibility of an advertisement. Would a advertisement that says that this is the greatest, device made of indestructible materials, and then all of a sudden you're finding out that it's, that their company went under, slightly after, or they're telling people, like using Santa Claus, for example, to appeal to kids. And then trying to, they're using Santa Claus to appeal to kids, but then they're giving them a bad product, or a product that's not healthy, or something to that effect. So anyway, we have to report the rhetorical appeals, but then when we're analyzing, we have to find a way of extrapolating that information out of a paragraph or essay. And so this is here's one way, or this is a strategy to use. It's called soapstones, or soapstone for short. Okay? And what it is it's a way to kind of set yourself up for reader. And what you're looking for is shifts. Shifts of tone, how they shift from speaking from one audience member to another audience member, for example, and evidence. So this is a way to collect evidence out of an essay. So situation and occasion. Starting with situation, you can write your notes on this. The difference between a situation and an occasion is a situation is kind of the background. What is the circumstance in which we are presently coming to this problem, this communication, okay? So for the Gettysburg Address, obviously, it was the Battle of Gettysburg, North against the South, so on and so forth. There's a situation that we're dealing with. And what was Lincoln dealing with at the time?
Civil War, slavery.
Slavery issues, but also one of the biggest things about the Gettysburg was that that was like the turning point. We didn't learn until afterward, but he was trying to rally his troops because he could have very easily lost the war. Okay? And so that was the situation that he was facing, was that he really had to rally his troops. The occasion might be slightly different in that what is the specific setting? So for this one, this is President Bush's post 9/11 speech. So the situation was the background, what happened. We were attacked. We didn't know at the time if it was terrorism or not. In fact, he did this the very next day after the towers fell. So at the time, we were still speculating as to who did this. Was it terrorism? Was it really did somebody really? They counted it terrorism right after the second plane. The second plane hit not the second plane, but the plane hit the Pentagon. And once it was separate, the plane hit the Pentagon, and they're like, we think this is terrorism. And then that other third plane, or actually fourth plane, went down with all the people. They finally figured it out, but still it was speculative as to whether this was terrorism, who did it, and we were a country basically flailing. Okay, that would be the occasion. Audience is very important because the audience can be a specific individual, it can be a group of people, and it can also have shifts in who the intended audience is. And so evidence of audience awareness is very important. To be aware of a reader's or a speaker's audience is really important, because if you're unaware of your audience, if you think your audience is going to support you and all of a sudden you say something and they turn on you like dogs, like the one guy who, he obviously didn't have audience awareness. He was the one who said, oh, there's a such thing as justifiable rape or something like that. And he said it like in the National Theater of Republicans, right? He was a Republican senator, I believe, I'm not sure. And remember him saying that there was, and everybody was like, what? And like even every Republican turned on him, and he was like discredited. He never was able. He like had to retort, or he had to recount what he said, and say, "Oh, I'm sorry," reel himself back in, and then he had to try to back shuffle and say, "Well, what I meant to say was," and that was because he didn't have a very good idea of who his audience was. He really thought that everybody was going to go, yeah, because he thought that everybody believed that, oh, well, we shouldn't kill. What he was trying to get at was that we shouldn't have the right to an abortion. But rather than say we shouldn't have the right to an abortion, he said,
well, all you have to do is turn on the magical anti-rape switch or something.
Exactly, yeah, it was horrible. It was just, I could not believe his statements. But that was obvious that he did not know who his audience was, and so that evidence of audience awareness was really lacking in his part. But see if in this speech the president is aware of his audience and if there's audience shifts. And then purpose, sometimes there's multiple purposes of a speech, and don't get caught into that simplistic purpose, to reassure the American people that we're okay. Do we really need a president's speech to reassure us that we're okay? What was the real purpose behind this speech, kind of thing? And finally, we have two more, syntax. And I think some of you might be a little confused about what syntax is. So I definitely want you to make sure that we have evidence of that. Syntax it's basically a combination of perfect word choice, selecting your words specifically so it conveys the emotion you want it to convey. Instead of saying, "I'm really upset that you didn't do this," you say, "You just pissed me off." That's a totally different syntax, isn't it? Yeah. And it conveys a different tone of voice as well, doesn't it? Okay? Now, if I say to somebody, "Sweetie, I really wish you wouldn't do that," has a totally different syntax than "knock it off." Understand? So precise language, precise tone is part of syntax. Okay? The second is whether it's an elevated language, whether you're speaking, maybe you're speaking to a group of like, maybe you're accepting the Nobel Prize. You would want to have a much more eloquent speech. You would not be talking to the normal person, maybe talking over their head. So maybe some of the things that you say, maybe you'd even use some Greek and Latin things just to show how smart you were.
Well, that would be knowing your audience, though.
Yeah, that would also be knowing your audience, but it's part of syntax, in that your language expresses who you are. And or maybe you have a very simplistic language that is just even keeled and easy. Okay, so that's syntax. So basically, it's precise word choice and how you use and sentence formations, things like that. I wouldn't use if I'm giving a speech to the entire world stage. I probably wouldn't say, "We ain't gonna take it," right? Okay, and then on the back is tone. And I gave you a hint that the word tone, so that's where we get the soapstone, right? And tone really means the author's attitude towards their subject. And again, you have to have evidence. How do you know that that's what their attitude is? Some of it is implicit or implied, and some of it is explicit and said. The implied tone, you're like, "Oh yeah, he's going to kick some booty," and that's implied. He doesn't actually come right out and say, "I'm going to do that." And then the explicit tone is, we will do this. So we're going to read this speech, and we're just going to talk about where you might place some of these items. But before I do, because I know you guys want to leave at 45 after, you will be writing as homework. It's your only homework. It's very short, and it is for points. I'm not grading for grammar or punctuation or anything like that, just on ideas. You need to write a paragraph about this, explaining basically how this speech makes you feel about being an American citizen in terms of the emotional appeal. The emotional appeal that the president gives off in this essay After hearing this essay, how does it make you feel as an American? That's what I want you to, because feelings are emotions, right? So you can talk about your emotions. I just need a paragraph. So 10 to 12 good sentences. Okay, and it is for points. So let's read the speech and see if I can help you guys out. Think of this as being President Bush reading.
Are you going to do the accent?
No! I don't have enough twang in my voice. Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. The victims were in airplanes or in their offices, secretaries, businessmen and women, military and federal workers, moms and dads, friends and neighbors. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. The pictures of airplanes flying into buildings, fires burning, huge structures collapsing have filled us with disbelief, terrible sadness, and a quiet, unyielding anger. These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into a chaos and retreat, but they have failed. Our country is strong. A great people has moved to defend a great nation. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundations of America. These acts shatter steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve. America was targeted for attack because we are the brightest beacon for freedom and opportunity in the world, and no one will keep that light from shining. Today our nation saw evil, the very worst of human nature, and we responded with the best of America, with the daring of our rescue workers and the caring for strangers and neighbors who came to give blood and help in any way they could. Immediately following the first attack, I implemented our government's emergency response plans. Our military is powerful and is prepared. Our emergency teams are working in New York City and Washington, D.C. to help with local rescue efforts. Our first priority is to get help with those who have been injured and take every precaution to protect our citizens at home and around the world from further attack. The function of our government continue without interruption. Federal agencies in Washington that have been evacuated today are reopening in essential personnel tonight and will be open for business tomorrow. Our financial institutions remain strong and the American economy will open for business as well. The search is underway for those who are behind these evil acts. I've directed full resources of our intelligence and law enforcement communities to find those responsible and bring them to justice. We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who will harbor them. I appreciate so very much the members of Congress who have joined me in strongly condemning these acts. And on behalf of the American people, I think of many world leaders who have called to offer their condolences and assistance. America and our friends and allies join with all those who want peace and security in the world, and we stand together to win the war against terrorism. Tonight I ask for your prayers for those who grieve, for the children whose worlds have been shattered, and for those whose sense of safety and security has been threatened. And I pray that they will be confronted by the power greater than any of us spoken through the ages in Psalms 23. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. This is a day when all Americans from every walk of life unite in our resolve for justice and peace. America has stood down enemies before, and we will do this, and we will do so this time. None of us will ever forget this day, yet we go forward to defend freedom and all that is good and just in our world. Thank you, good night, and God bless America. Hey, so there were a lot of shifts, weren't there?
I remember when that was given.
Yeah. Let's start with, so situation, occasion, I think you guys can figure out. So audience. Who is the audience?
The American people.
Just America?
American people and American soldiers.
Okay, at the very beginning it was. At the very beginning, he wanted to kind of calm America and say, hey, you know what, we're fine, and everything's up and running, okay? But there's a big shift when he stops talking to the American people, those who are afraid, maybe not knowing what's going on, and then he starts talking to the world stage. And he knows that his words are being heard A, by who did this, B, by people who might be harboring who did this, and C, by people who are going to also become our allies. And so this is a world stage at one point. And I think it can be argued as to where that full shift is. But I would say probably where it says immediately following the first attack, I implemented our government's emergency response plan. So he's telling the American people what he did, okay? And you know, we're here starting to do what we need to do. Then he says our first priority to get help to those who are injured and take precautions, protect our citizens home and around the world. So basically, this is where he's starting to talk to the world stage, and he's saying we've protected our citizens, and now we're making sure that there's not going to be any future attacks. But this for sure, absolutely, he's talking to more than just the Americans. The function of our government continue without interruption. Federal agencies are being evacuated, will be in business tomorrow. One thing is he knew that if the financial world collapses in the United States, it collapses elsewhere. And you have to keep financial systems working. Okay? We were just hours away from China starting their financial workday at the time that this occurred. So we definitely needed, or you know, the time that the speech was going on. So we definitely needed that encouragement for the world stage. Our financial institutions remain strong, and the American economy will do this as well, kind of ensuring that. But then I really like the next one. The search is underway for those who are behind evil, and then he says, we will take no distinction between terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them. That's a warning, isn't it? Mm-hmm. That's definitely a warning. If you know who did this, you best let us know, and you best get on the right side of the tracks. That's really, now, did he say that? No. So it's implicit, it's implied that he's warning other people. He's saying, hey, if you're on the wrong, then I really love this shift in tone. He went from his gruff stage back to the fatherly love stage, and I appreciate so very much the members of Congress who have joined me in strongly condemning these acts. But what is he really saying there? It takes Congress to do what?
To commit to war.
Congress has to commit to war. So what is he telling Congress to do? Prepare your policies, guys. We're going to war. I can go to war. He can go to war for what, 30 days? Without asking Congress.
No, 90 without.
Is it 90? There you go. See, I'm pretty good. Hey, I'm not a history teacher. 90 days without asking Congress, but 90 days isn't a long time to get all the deployments ready and get everything ready. And he's telling Congress, get the policies ready, boys. We're going to war. It's not stated there, but that's what he's saying. Okay? That's how you analyze things. Now, as you get to things like, so you can see by the tone of voice how he moves from being that strong president to that fatherly voice. Okay? To that comforting voice. Those shifts in tone tell you a lot about the emotion that he wants to be felt. A couple of the syntax things, and then you guys can go. I like to put boxes around words that I know show what's going on. How about this word here? This is the day when Americans from every walk in life unite in our resolve for justice. He didn't say, this is when we all need to come together and sing Kumbaya. He said, we're going to unite in our resolve. Those are specifically chosen words. Okay? Also, where he said, for those children whose worlds have been shattered. I think that that's a very eloquent statement. And I think that really, the syntax there is very important to show emotion. Okay? He didn't say children who lost their parents. He didn't say children who were frightened, but their lives were shattered. That's totally different. Okay? So those are where syntax is used to show that pathos. Okay? So that's how you can use soap tone. find evidence throughout your speech. Write your paragraphs and bring them back. That's your only homework.
Good job.